This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. We're here in Portland, Oregon right now, and I am joined by the one and only Tim Pool. Now, Tim, we're here covering the Patriot Prayer Rally / Antifa counter protest, and everyone's a Nazi, everyone's a fascist. Those terms are being slung around all over the place. Now, a lot of the people we're finding on the so-called tolerant left are not even really aware of what the actual definition of fascism is. So can you just lay it out for us and explain clearly for people what is the actual definition of fascism?
Well, I'm not a historian, but the general definition, my understanding is fascism is authoritarian nationalism. So I was just having a conversation about it, and I feel like it's like authoritarian traditionalism almost. It's an idea of like what made the country great, whereas communism actually is the inversion. It's like progressivism, this idea that you need to break down all the things, restart, culture revolution. It's really interesting to me. I feel like it really boils down to authoritarians who are either progressive or traditional, where you find communist or fascist,
So what do you think these guys need to do or to be able to understand the hypocrisy?
Like what you mean, like the Antifa people who don't understand? Look, I think most of the people on that side just heard from their friends that Nazis are showing up. They don't actually know who these people are, what's going on. Because, I mean, I don't know if you've got other footage of this, but you'll notice that there are anti-Trump people in here having conversations with no problem. Yeah. There are black, Latino, mixed race people here, no problem. On that side, they're saying everyone here is a white supremacist. That's absolutely not true. Yeah. And I don't know how you convince them if you try and I tried talking to them. I walked up to some counter protesters and they immediately started telling me to, F off. They were threatening me, telling me they wouldn't talk to me, and I was like, whoa. I was like, why are you so mad? Like, dude, I said to him, I was like, I got mad respect for you coming down here with your sign, standing up for what you believe in. I think no one should intimidate you. No one should shut you down. You should be allowed to say what you want. And the guy, this confused look in his face, I was like, I'm just here as a journalist. I want to know what you want to think. And then he goes, F off. And I'm like, some of them did talk to me though. Yeah. But the problem then is, if they refuse to listen when you're like, I was walking in this park and the police gave an order to the protesters to disperse to the west. They marched north. On my stream, I said, the protesters are disobeying the orders of the police who told them to march west. They're now marching north. And some guy heard me, turns around and goes, you fascist, F you, blah, blah. And I'm like, why am I a fascist? And he was like, because, man, the police are, telling people protesters can do whatever they want. I'm like, I didn't say they couldn't. I'm just telling people what the police said. And he was like, yeah, well, you're a fascist. I'm like, what? I literally am like, the police said this, the protesters did this, now you're a fascist. Yeah. So what do? You can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're probably one of the most unbiased reporters I know, and have they come to the point of calling you a racist Nazi?
They tried calling me alt-right for a short period. It didn't work, because it's really difficult for them when you call a mixed race person a white supremacist. Like, my family history dealt with white supremacy. Miscegenation laws in this country made it illegal to commingle between races. So that narrative fell apart. So all they do now is try to call me a sympathizer. Right. Like, oh, we saw you hanging out with those fascists. And I'm like, you mean an interview? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, Vice literally went to the hotel room of a neo-Nazi. I went to a bar and talked to some people. Doesn't matter. They got to smear me somehow. That's all they got. That's all they have.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Well, you're over the target and doing the right thing when when you're getting those kinds of people trying to shut you down and stuff like that. So I just encourage you to keep up the great work. For anybody who's just learning about you now, where can they go to follow you and find your work?
YouTube.com/TimCast. But I want to say one thing. I don't consider myself the most unbiased. I just try to be fair and honest. And full disclosure, I am a liberal. I have no problem saying that, but I get like people who go to my channel they think I'm a conservative until like I make a video and they're like, wait a minute. But I would never, when I talk to people over here, I'm like, how do you feel about white supremacy? Like, I hate it. I'm like, okay. But the mainstream media sources will say, we don't care even if you denounce it, you are. Like, I would never do that. Like, I let people explain themselves and say what they believe. And that's the best definition you can get of somebody is what they claim to be, right? Yeah. Maybe they're lying, it happens, but I just try to be fair to everybody, and sometimes I have bias. I'm pro-free speech, pro-free expression. Sure. Identity politics bothers me. Right. That is what it is. Yeah, I'll just try to be fair to people.
Yeah, we can't not have some sort of bias in all of this, but what's important is having an open mind and opening up that engaging in dialogue with one another and just learning from one another, which is what you're good at.
I want to say one more thing. What really blows my mind is that 10 years ago, liberals and conservatives were at each other's throats. They were like, you're a conservative, you're a liberal. Now it's like, I could actually have a conversation with someone like Ben Shapiro, who I disagree with on so much, who's a conservative and religious, But because we agree on the principles of talking to each other and not beating each other and being honest to each other, I actually consider him to be, like, I actually look up to him in terms of his defense of expression and freedom. Whereas 10 years ago, the conservatives were your opposition. Right. Now I'm like, the fringy authoritarians are my opposition. They're the weirdos, you know? Yeah. It's crazy how I have friends who are conservative and we argue less about politics and more about principle now. It's mind-blowing that agreeing with, you know, I'm liberal, my friend's a conservative, but because we stand for the Constitution, American values, and freedom, that like unites us. And it's the weirdest thing to me. Like, I think it's cool actually, but I'm also kind of scared that you've got authoritarians on the the far left who want to show up, accuse people of being white supremacists, and then bash them with bike locks. Yeah. Or
Well, I mean, maybe there's still hope. So, yeah. So, yeah. So again, just keep up the great work. Thanks so much for talking to us. And yeah, what's your Twitter so people can follow?
TimCast. TIMCAST.
All right, links will be located in the description below, guys. Check him out. Show him some love. Tim Pool, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks, man.